Hey guys, my name is Blain Ho-shing and you are listening to Too Much Talk. I want to show you that we're not all that different. Think of this podcast as my misplaced diary, where my innermost thoughts, questions and stories are being read out loud. Confused? Well, stay tuned and let me show you. Episode 1. Broken? Meet broken. I want to ask a question. Why does misery love company? Well, Cambridge Dictionary says people who are unhappy like to share their own troubles. I personally think it's a bit deeper than that. I feel like people who are broken like to hide their brokenness by trying to fix other people's faults and challenges. I'm people. People is me. Well, at least it was about 3 years ago, until I made the conscious decision that my peace of mind was going to be the most precious thing to me. Seems like a no-brainer, right? But how many of you can honestly say that you put your mental health and well-being before anything else in your life? I'm talking about your friends, your family, your children, even your career. Some people listening might think, this sounds really selfish. How can I put myself before anybody else? Well, let me just tell you this from somebody who's been doing it for a little while now. When you put your mental health and more importantly, your peace of mind before anything else in your life, everything else in your life falls into place. Okay, enough of this Dr. Blain stuff. You want to know how I came to this realization. Or maybe you don't, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Let me take you back to summer 2016. I had just been sacked from the most shittiest retail job ever. I won't tell you the details just yet, that's for another podcast. But let's just say I was in the wrong. The knock-on effects of me losing that job meant that my living arrangements were in shambles. So there I was, no money, no home, and no immediate family. And just a small circle of friends. And by circle, I mean triangle. I mean, I've always had very few friends. By choice, mind you. I feel like my curse in this life is that I'm a fantastic reader of people. I see right through the facade and right to the core. But, as we all know, seeing people for who they really are isn't always a good thing. On the flip side though, when you meet me, I strive to be the life and soul of the party. And like so many other broken people in this world, I live to make people laugh. Anyway, sometimes when you hit rock bottom, it's hard for you to pick yourself back up again. So what do? You go and search for people who are just as broken as you are. I began associating myself with people who I wouldn't normally be seen dead with. They had no emotional maturity, no general maturity. We literally had nothing in common. I feel like the only things that we could kind of talk about was that we both like to have a good time. And we dibbled and dabbled in a bit of fashion every now and then. But it was through these senseless entanglements that I was to meet somebody who changed the way I viewed my peace of mind forever. Now, for the sake of this podcast, we'll call this person Dan. I don't know the rules or the laws around saying somebody's real name in a podcast, but I don't want to find out. So Dan was totally different from anybody I had met at that time. He had a strong, overpowering air of confidence. Some would probably say a little bit arrogant. I remember our first conversation. It went a little something like this.
Say, what's your name?
My name's Blain. What's yours?
Dan.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Yeah, I don't really know why I'm here, to be honest, because I just feel like I'm way too nice for these dirty clubs. I'm going to be an actor in Hollywood one day, and these people around me just better understand that they need to accept me for who I am and who I want to be. And basically, I'm only here because my friend dragged me here.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. Are you having a good time? Yes, I know what you're going to say. His arrogance should have been a red flag for me. But in fact, it was actually quite refreshing. It was like I had finally met somebody who wanted to do more with their life, who wasn't afraid to show their confidence and throw it in your face, even if I wasn't able to get in a word edgewise, and displayed some narcissistic vibes. As the months went on, the mutual friend who introduced me to Dan seemed to like the idea of us hanging out together. He was a club promoter, which meant he could get us into all the good clubs, and sometimes even free drinks. All we had to do is look handsome/pretty, and I guess there was this unspoken rule where we kind of had to make him look good in the process. You know, kind of be his arm candy. Except both of us made it very clear that we were not anybody's arm candy. So we settled for just being friends, a nice cute group of friends. Almost like a boy version of Destiny's Child. Dan, he fancied himself something of a Beyonce. I was Kelly, and our good friend, well, of course, he was Michelle. It wasn't long before myself and Dan were the best of friends. I feel like we grew out of only wanting to go to clubs. I feel like we bonded more over the fact that we were both in love with media, music, and film. He wanted to be an actor, and I loved anything media and anything film. But mostly, I loved to sing. And of course, this inevitably meant that our mutual friends saw less and less of us, while we saw more and more of each other. Like I said before, I feel like I'm a fantastic judge of character. When you've been many facades in your life, it's easy for you to spot a facade from a mile off. It's almost like when they say, surgery knows surgery, or real recognizes real. Well, this fraud recognized that fraud. It wasn't long before I realised that Dan was nothing more than somebody trying to cover up their many, many insecurities of self-image, lack of literacy skills, and the constant need to compare and compete with everybody around him. Whereas me, on the other hand, I was desperately trying to disguise the fact that I really wanted this friendship to work. My fear of abandonment had crippled me my entire life, and I'd be damned if I lost this friend. The thing is, when you live with abandonment issues, you find yourself ignoring all the toxic things that people do to you in life. Because a lot of times my thought process was being acknowledged is definitely better than being alone. Wrong. Sometimes we confuse being alone with being lonely and spend so much time trying to fill an empty void. Anyway, back to the story. Later that year, I managed to bag myself a job as a vocal coach at a prestigious secondary school. And I finally got my beloved West London apartment. Okay, it was a flat, but it was still mine and I loved it. Things seemed to be looking up for me, if I do say so myself. Dan, on the other hand, was finding it increasingly difficult to book any acting roles. I found myself spending all my time trying to help him book auditions or help him with drama school auditions, which he previously told me that he had been rejected for the last 5 years in a row. Of course, I had no issue helping him because what are friends for? I spent many nights on the phone and almost all of my weekends helping Dan and giving him words of encouragement. This is why I found it so difficult that he would feed my insecurities with throw-around statements like, I was only a vocal coach because I didn't have the talent to be a real vocalist. In fact, I think his exact words were, those who can't teach. What a fucking cheek. But was he right? On the other hand, called me his brother and tell me he couldn't do anything without me and that I was his best friend and it was me and him against the world. I never had anybody tell me that they consider me to be like a brother to them before. Especially as I was estranged from my own abusive family. Again, another podcast. So of course, that's all I needed to continue to be the backbone of the Dan Show. Listen, I can tell you 101 stories about Dan's using and betrayal, but I won't, because the point is, misery needs company. And guess who was sitting right next to him, cozied up with his feet up and a stupid fucking smile? Yep, me. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't an angel. I'd lived half of my life, if not all of my life, in fight or flight mode. So I gave as good as I got. But I can honestly say it was always in retaliation. Not that this is okay, but just giving you a bit of context, because Mama didn't raise no fool. Well, Mama didn't actually raise me at all. Well, anyway, that's another story. Dan was a very flirtatious person, and as I said previously, craved attention from everybody he came across. I mean, he did get chatted up a lot of times, but people found it so strange that we were literally only just friends.
Attention to all my fellow gays. We don't always have to fuck before friendship.
Come to think of it, I always sensed a sense of resentment from him because maybe I was the only one who didn't fancy him. I would often find myself receiving dirty looks from random guys in clubs because unbeknownst to me, Dan had made it seem like we were more than just friends. I mean, he wouldn't actually say it, but you know, when you stand next to somebody and insinuate to other people. Me usually being so drunk I could barely two-step, I was always blissfully unaware. Until I was aware. As I record this story, I have to remind myself to edit out certain things because I have to continue to tell my truth and my story. And some of this involves me telling other people's truths and other people's stories. And that's not what it's about. So if sometimes it skips from one major event to another, it's because I've edited it out because I didn't want to have to say or expose somebody else's business. Even if that said business affected me as well. Anyway, down the line, Dan moved into a new place, which I actually helped him to get. Of course, he was super grateful. If super grateful was another word for ungrateful, and couldn't care less. It was then he started to show his actual toxic character. He often told his flatmates stories and lies about me and encouraged narratives that he knew to be untrue. In hindsight, I now know that these were his attempts to try and humble me because apparently my phony sense of self-worth desperately clashed and battled with his counterfeit confidence. Dan would sometimes ask me to be in social settings with his friends, which was always awkward because I knew how much shit he spoke about them and they knew how much shit he spoke about me. But we had that unwritten rule where we kind of had to be loyal and not say anything to each other and pretend it didn't happen, even though it was really odd and really awkward. Not to mention the fact that if I knew their innermost secrets, it's pretty sure that they knew some of mine. After a while, I started to distance myself from him. Of course, it always went unnoticed because he just found new people to feed his ego. But it was in spring 2017 where he contacted me about a potential opportunity that would be fantastic for the both of us. It was to create a short film for one of the UK's biggest television networks. He found out about the opportunity through one of his teachers in his summer school drama class. I couldn't possibly turn down this opportunity. This time I recognised that this opportunity could be fantastic for the both of us, so I wasn't going to be anybody's yes man. I wasn't just going to let him take over. We were going to be a team, whether he liked it or not. I had to say that Dan really wanted me to do this with him. He told me that he wasn't able to execute it by himself and he needed my help. Wow, maybe he did value me as a friend. We both came up with an amazing idea for a short film. We had made the mutual decision that we were both going to talk about our black gay experiences. But soon, of course, things started to take a turn for the worst. We had a script editor, and this editor would read the script that we wrote and send back feedback. Of course, myself and Dan were both writing the script, but they didn't know who was writing what. So I would send what I had written, and he would send what he had written. For some reason, everything that Dan had written would come back as something that we should potentially take out of the script. But everything I had written seemed to be things that they enjoyed and they liked. Of course, this caused mayhem. Dan completely resented me for this. I mean, it wasn't my fault, But for some reason, he tried to find fault in my talent. And instead of being the united front that we should have been, Dan started getting very territorial about our project. That was a really tough time for me because on one hand, an industry professional was saying that they liked what I had written, even though they didn't know I had written it. We would have conversations about how we wanted things to go and how we would contact the production company to let them know things that we did and didn't like. We'd both agree on it. And then Dan would have secret emails and secret conversations with them, acting as if he had no idea what we spoke about. Making me, of course, look like I was being difficult, when in actuality, a lot of the times I actually agreed with the production company. But of course, me being as loyal as I always have been, I had to have his back. While we were working on our film, Dan had a horrific event happen to him, caused by those friends he wanted me to hang about with. I won't say exactly what happened because that's definitely not my story to tell, and I wouldn't have wished that on anybody. But I wouldn't be human if I didn't say a part of me was feeling like, I told you so. I thought this would be a learning moment for Dan. I thought he would finally see that I had been a great friend to him and supported him and pretty much been his cheerleader our entire friendship. But of course, no. Dan's ego overtook everything, and he still found fault in everything I did and every contribution I had for our film. After the production of our film, I'd started to grow really, really tired of being his rock, just for him to throw that same rock back at me as soon as my back was turned. I completely cut him off and refused to speak to him. In fact, it was a good 6 months that we went without speaking, until one day I got an email of him apologising and telling me that everything he had done, he didn't mean to, and that he was sorry. Of course, a part of me knew that he had probably frigged up his other friendships, but never fear, good old, responsible, reliable, insecure Blain was always there to pick him up when he was down. He acknowledged this with a brief statement of something like, yeah, you're right, then continued to tell me about the breakdown of his then relationship and how badly he had been wronged by those friends of his. Why was I so stupid? Why do I always get myself back in these predicaments? I couldn't blame him at this point because actually it was my fault. I was hurting myself. I understood who he was and I let it happen. All because I was fearful of not having a support system, even if this support system was Dan. I had given everything I had to try and maintain this friendship, and I had nothing else to give. Depressed? Who is she? I had gone way beyond depression. I was now free-falling in a deep black hole. This was not the first time I'd got myself in these type of situations. I'd been doing it all my life, running into toxic situations and trying to maintain them just because I had this major fear of abandonment. Get your shit together, Blain, I said. People think you wake up one day and decide, I'm not going to take this shit anymore. For some people, that's actually how it works. But in actuality, for me, it wasn't. It was a long journey where I had to actually come to terms with the fact that I was in self-destructive mode. It was me. I was the one doing this. I was the one putting myself in these stupid situations. I'm not ashamed to say I went to therapy. Although this friendship was the last straw, it was definitely not the only contributing factor as to why I decided to go. I laughed, I cried, and I had to delve deep into what I was doing to contribute to this shit show and the decisions I was making to destroy my peace of mind. I had to realise that giving all of me was fantastic for everybody else. Take. But then what did I have left at the end of the night? When I went to bed, resentful of all the people I felt had used me. Did they use me? Or did I give them all of me and allow it to happen? I had to take some real responsibility for my own actions. And I also had to come to terms with the fact that everything I went through with Dan, it was not entirely his fault. He was on his own journey and doing his own thing. Looking back, I seriously mourn the time I wasted on self-destroy mode. I wonder where I'd be if I'd come to these conclusions sooner. I know you're not meant to waste time thinking about these things, but sometimes you can't help but think, what if? Light bulb moment. It seems I was also misery, and I definitely needed that company. There are tons and tons of tools that you learn during therapy on how to be the best version of yourself. But I can honestly say that the best ever advice and the best thing I ever learned was being unapologetically open to the fact that my peace of mind would be the most important thing to me from this point forward, bar none. Here's a small breakdown of what I mean when I say your peace of mind needs to be the most important thing to you. Side note, feel free to take a shot every time I say peace of mind. The only way I can think of describing it is it's like having a child. You want to protect them at all costs. You don't want to put them in danger, and you want to teach them all the tools to make them the best person they can be to go out in the world and make an impact. Well, that's exactly how you're supposed to treat your peace of mind. Don't put yourself in danger if it affects your peace of mind. Don't associate with people that could be toxic if it affects your peace of mind. Put your peace of mind first, and everything else will always fall into place. Maybe not straight away, of course you have to do the work, but definitely eventually. I mean, how can you be the best friend, the best family member, the best colleague, if you don't have your mental health or peace of mind in order? Of course, I know this sounds easier said than done, and I'm making it sound so simple. Maintaining your peace of mind looks like acknowledging the red flags around you, accepting that you have boundaries. And these boundaries don't always have to be vocal, meaning you don't always have to tell people what your boundaries are. You can have your boundaries in your head, and when these boundaries are overstepped, you can act accordingly. And by act accordingly, I don't mean beat their ass. Although sometimes, no, I'm kidding. I just mean letting it be known that this is not something that you accept, because this interferes with your peace. Trust me, if I can do it, you can do it. Protect your peace and acknowledge and work on your insecurities. This is not something that takes one day to fix. Sometimes it actually takes a lifetime, but that's your personal journey. Sometimes when you're trying to be the best version of yourself, you'll realize that there are some people around you who won't want you to do this. They don't want to change, because sometimes when you change, it shows that they have to change. They have to stop seeing you in the way they used to see you. And sometimes that can be pretty uncomfortable. Also, your personal changes and boundaries can highlight to people that you are not the only one who needs to get their shit together. You'll be surprised how many friends find comfort in the fact that you're the broken friend or the insecure friend. And when you start doing better for yourself, they do not appreciate it. Eventually, you'll start to notice that the people you attract in your life are much more healthier, much more level-headed, and 9 times out of 10 on the same wavelength as you. There may be setbacks and times that you revert back to the old you, but just remember to dust yourself off and continue on your path. Don't stop there. Don't beat yourself up. Accept that you are human and you will make mistakes along the way. But like I said before, always make sure that your peace of mind is the most precious thing to you. I'm Blain Ho-shing, and I don't claim to be a doctor, but I'm just trying to do my part to educate the masses. I hope you got something out of this. Until next time, you've been listening to Too Much Talk.